Hello and welcome once again to my porch. Less messy than last time we did a video on the porch. Not as straightened up, as clean as I'd like it to be, but the porch is a work in progress. This, of course, is not a video about my porch. This is a video about some news that I saw today and I wanted to talk about real quick. And the news is that House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was asked if impeachment would be a top priority for Democrats should they retake the House. And Jeffries said, of course not. We're focused on affordability. Now, this obviously caused a lot of consternation, and I have actually somewhat nuanced thoughts about it. But before I get into those nuanced thoughts about it, I think it's worth talking about impeachment both as a remedy, what it's supposed to accomplish, and its history. Has impeachment accomplished those things? So the point behind impeachment, as it was envisioned at the Constitutional Convention, and remember, there was this debate at the convention, this is 1787 in Philadelphia, over the time in office of the president. How long would the president be in office? There were some who wanted a single term, 6 or 7 years, no opportunity for re-election, because they were worried about the immense amount of power they were putting into a single office. There were those who wanted considerably shorter terms, with the president kind of structured or responsible to some sort of executive committee that would also be doing quite a bit of governing work. Alexander Hamilton suggested a lifetime appointment, your president on good behavior, under the idea that you needed that kind of guarantee of longevity to get the kind of strong and energetic executive authority that you needed. They end up kind of splitting the difference, right? They split the difference. So you get a president who can be elected for 4-year terms, not so short, but not too long either, and who can be reelected indefinitely. A nod to Hamilton's idea that some amount of longevity is actually not a bad thing here. Of course, Washington serves just 2 terms, and that sets the standard. Not broken until FDR, who runs and wins 4 times, dies in office, and about a decade later, Congress passes the amendment that limits, the 22nd Amendment, that limits service in the office of the presidency to 2 terms, basically. 10 years if you are in an unusual set of circumstances, but 8 years for virtually everyone else. Now, part of the argument for having a president who could be reelected again and again and again to skeptics of the Constitution was that, listen, this guy isn't going to be a king, and he's not going to be a king. The one thing that makes him not a king is that he's also going to be eligible for removal if he does something terrible, if he breaks a law, if he is tyrannical in some sense, if he engages in activities that violate his oath of office. Then Congress, who they envision would be the strongest of the branches, would be able to remove him with a simple majority vote in the House and a vote of 2/3 in the Senate. And for all of the offices that have quite a bit of longevity attached to them, and this really means federal judges, the Constitution provides for the remedy of impeachment. Now, here's kind of the issue. The framers envisioned that impeachment would be relatively straightforward. This is why they have what seems to us to be such a high bar. A majority vote in the House and a supermajority vote in the Senate. They figured, and they're not thinking about the existence of political parties or partisanship as we understand it, they figured that a sufficiently terrible president would have no problem angering enough people to get the requisite votes to be removed. They didn't think this would happen all too often, but they figured it would be a straightforward process if it did. And they figured wrong. And they figured wrong when it comes to just impeachment in general. The first impeachment trial was of Samuel Chase, a justice on the Supreme Court, who had been impeached for being too partisan. This was not the president. This was not someone who had the legitimacy of an election behind them. And nonetheless, the impeachment didn't work. They couldn't remove him from office. And that was kind of it until Andrew Johnson in 1868, when the Reconstruction Congress, led by radical Republicans, wanted to remove Johnson because he was an obstacle to Reconstruction. He opposed efforts to really transform the social order of the South and consistently vetoed Reconstruction legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So Republicans wanted to impeach him, and they impeached him in the House, got that majority vote, and then they failed by a vote of removing him in the Senate. After that, there's no serious threat of impeachment in American politics, of a president at the very least. No serious threat of impeachment until Richard Nixon. And Nixon, aware that he might actually be the guy who gets successfully impeached, opts to resign instead of stand for impeachment. Fast forward to William Jefferson Clinton, Bill, Slick Willie, whatever you want to call him, who is impeached over perjury related to the Monica Lewinsky affair, and the impeachment trial fails in the Senate. And the impeachment trial fails in the Senate. There aren't enough votes to convict him. Impeachment's actually floated a bunch about George W. Bush for a variety of reasons, but it never happens. It never gets off the ground. And we don't get the next impeachment trial until Donald Trump in 2019, which then, again, fails in the Senate. And then we get our next impeachment trial in February of 2021 with Donald Trump, once again, and it fails in the Senate. I think this is a very good case to make that impeachment as a remedy just doesn't work, that the bar is too high, and that lowering the bar might not be a good idea. Because you also don't want a situation where presidents are kind of removed willy-nilly. It causes instability. Or at least, that's the argument. And I go back and forth about this. So impeachment as a means to remove doesn't really seem to work. But what about impeachment as an attempt to just discipline, right? To sort of send a loud political signal to the rest of the system that, oh, this president, he shouldn't be there. He's going to be there because partisanship, political parties, makes it so that it's very difficult to reach the impeachment threshold. Co-partisans have a vested interest in not having their guy removed from office. But it still sends a message. And you can see this kind of work out through history. This is what happened with Andrew Johnson. No, they did not remove him, but they basically eliminated him as a political factor. And later that year, Ulysses Grant wins the presidency handily. It's the threat of impeachment that gets Nixon to resign, that really impresses upon Nixon that he is done. And from the perspective of Republicans, the impeachment trial against Bill Clinton did sort of clip the wings of that administration. Likewise, Trump's impeachment in 2019 really did damage his standing. Didn't guarantee that he was going to lose, but it added to a constant background of scandal and misconduct that made Trump seem inappropriate for the office, which, I mean, he is, but you have to make that case to the voters. Nothing is self-evident in politics. And so to wrap all the way back to Hakeem Jeffries, there is a case to make, right? That even if impeachment is not going to succeed, they're not going to remove Donald Trump. It would take, I don't know what it would take to get 67 votes to remove Donald Trump from office. It's probably not going to happen. Even if that's the case, impeachment is still worthwhile to send the message, to impress upon the American public that this guy has done things that render him unfit for the office, to force Republicans to answer for why they're standing by the president, even as he does things that are a disgrace to the office, and to create a concentrated political pressure. And the case for this, right, is that you're not really going to be passing any legislation if you're in the majority. This is Democrats. The president's still going to be Trump. So you're really going to be focused on investigations, on trying to uncover all the terrible stuff that's happened over the last 2 years or so. And impeachment can be part of that process. Even if it doesn't end in removal, it can produce a trial, and the trial can add to that process. Again, the goal is using the investigative powers of the Congress to really just, frankly, harass the president constantly and remind voters that this guy shouldn't be there. And I think that's where I fall. But I said I had a somewhat nuanced view of this. And I suppose my nuanced view of this, or at least I can understand where Jeffries is coming from, is that this is not going to happen. This is going to eat up a lot of time. The American public is really concerned about affordability. Trump's at his weakest on questions of the economy, on questions of inflation, on questions of, does the president care about your household and its standing? And so if Democrats go in and then focus relentlessly on impeachment, it may create the impression that they don't really care about what's happening to ordinary American families. And this would then backfire on the party. And I sort of understand that perspective from Jeffries. I think my response would be, and I think there's a way to integrate these two things together, right? My response would be, is that you should not think of impeachment as intention with dealing with affordability. You should think of impeachment and the things you would go after Trump on, which is largely corruption, right? You should think of impeachment as a tool in impressing upon the larger public your commitment to their well-being. And that is to say, you're making an argument that the corruption of this administration, that its obsession with self-enrichment, that all of its law-breaking and all of its transgressions are the reason why they don't care about you, are the reason they're not concerned with you, and they're more concerned with lining their pockets than they are with helping you. And we're going to show you that. We're going to show you through our investigations how much more concerned they are with lining their pockets than they are with helping you. I think it's possible to walk and chew gum at the same time here. I think that's a message that could work. And we'll see if Jeffries sees that as well. But it's possible to be nimble here. It's possible to be a little more effective here. It's possible to combine these messages into one. There are candidates already doing it. Jon Ossoff in Georgia, for example, is already kind of trying out this approach. And I think it's one that could work. So I understand where Jeffries is coming from. I understand his thinking. He's not the most nimble politician out there, so I kind of get where he's at. But I do think they will be leaving money on the table if they try to treat these things as separate, because they're not. It's one message, it's one story, it's one argument against the president, who is currently engaged, among other things, in crashing the country into a mountain and robbing us blind while he does it. Thank you, as always, for watching. Check out this video here, and I'll see you next time with more commentary.